Well, good morning. My name is Angela Thurman. I am the founder and principal managing director of Thurman Co., a project management consulting firm in Houston. I am a certified project uh, manage, project, project management professional. I had to think of it for a minute. Um, Certified by the Project Management Institute, and I've been doing project management for a very long time, about 30 years actually. And it's my pleasure today to talk to you about project execution. So this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we actually get into the work of the tasks that need to be accomplished in order to bring about the outcomes for which the project was launched. So let me go over our agenda for today. We're going to talk about resource management, communications, budget, the project schedule, and key performance indicators, or KPIs as they're generally known. So when we think of project management, we generally think about those tasks that are involved to complete the work that was previously outlined in the project charter. So why are we even doing this project? What needs to be accomplished? So hopefully the team has already worked out the work breakdown structure, which is breaking down the tasks into individual small increments of work. And then that's done earlier. We talked about that in our first class. And so this is now then moving into the execution phase, which leads then into the monitoring and controlling phase. So traditionally, project management has centered around process groups, and those were discussed in earlier versions of the Project Management Body of Knowledge, or PMBOK guide. Those process groups are initiating, which is the phase that relates to defining the new project or starting a new phase of an existing project. And it primarily centers around getting the authorization to start this new project. The next phase would be planning. And this is the process of establishing the scope of the project, refining what the objective of the project is, and defining the course of action required to achieve the objectives or outcomes of the project. The next phase would be executing, which is completing those the necessary tasks to complete the work that is defined in the project management plan. And that work is necessary to satisfy the project requirements. The following phase is monitoring and controlling. So these are the processes that track, review, and regulate the progress and performance of the project. And this is where the project manager will identify any areas where changes need to be made, and where the project manager would initiate those changes. And then finally, the last process group is closing. And these are all of the processes that are performed to formally complete the project or phase or contract. So as I mentioned, these are the traditional project management process groups. Well, all of that has changed with the new PMBOK 7th edition. And with the release of the 7th edition, the traditional model has now been replaced with a new model that is focused on the value that the project manager brings to the organization. So instead of the project life cycle, the model is now based on areas of expertise called performance domains. And these performance domains run concurrently. So instead of being a linear life cycle, these performance domains run in an integrated system where you're constantly delivering value to the organization. They are interdependent, and together they ensure that we have a successful delivery of the project's intended outcomes. So I know that that's a lot to take in, and if you're not a member of PMI, you may not have even seen a PMBOK guide before. But if you are a member of PMI, a PMP like me or Lori, this is a radical departure from what we previously understood. So Lori, have you had a chance to look at the new 7th guide?
I have not, but what you're describing is real life in project management.
It is. Change is constant, and PMI is recognizing that. And I think that part of the reason for this departure is in recognition of the iterative methods around Agile, and partly a little bit of incorporation of that into the new guide. So if I advance, so here are the performance domains, and keep in mind that these are the areas of expertise that the project manager is expected to demonstrate. So we have the stakeholders domain, which centers around those activities and functions associated with stakeholders. Development approach and life cycle. So this is going to be centered around the cadence and life cycle phases of the project. Project work. Again, this is going to be focused on managing your physical resources and fostering a learning environment for your team around the project. Measurement. So this will be anything to do with maintaining an acceptable performance and how you measure performance of the project. The team domain is anything associated with the people who are responsible for producing the project's deliverables that realize the business outcomes. Planning is all of those associated functions for the initial, ongoing, and evolving organization and coordination necessary for delivering the project deliverables and outcomes. Delivery is the functions associated with delivering the scope and the quality that the project was undertaken to achieve. And then finally, uncertainty, which is what we discussed last week, are the activities and functions associated with risk and uncertainty. Any questions? Okay. So let's talk about the first one, resource management. So there are many different types of resources. I've outlined just a few of them here, but they're broken down into 2 major categories: physical resources and human resources. So physical resources that's anything that is not a human. Physical resources could be your raw materials, equipment, software, test equipment, licenses. It could be building permits, anything that's not a human. And then you have your human resources. Well, these are the people that you need on your team to accomplish the work, the objectives, the outcomes. Any questions on resources? All right. So when we think about the physical resources, some of the factors that we want to think about, because this can be very, very complex. So think about the supply chain and logistics involved. Think about management approval cycles. What in your organization, it could be complex, it could be very simple. Maybe you just need to go to your manager to approve a purchase order. Maybe you've got a very complex supply chain organization, and it could take weeks to get the levels of approval required to issue a purchase order. That's the arena that I came from. So you've got procurement lead times. Once you do place a purchase order, what's the lead time to get that material or other goods, services? Transport and delivery methods. So when you're working with your team, you have to think about that. Is this something that can be shipped in by a plane within 3 days? Or is it going to have to come on a cargo ship and it's going to take weeks? Storage and disposition of the materials. Are these hazardous goods, chemicals that require special storage that have environmental controls involved? Inventory tracking. Does your facility have the proper controls to track the inventory of the materials that you're going to receive? And then all of the global logistics and sustainability issues. Do you have any sort of requirements to dispose of materials at the end of the project? All right. Human capital, human resources. So estimating for human resources is a little bit more straightforward, but it is also something that you need to consider when you're going to be working on your project plan. So what are the roles of the team members and their skill sets? Do you need software developers? Do you need systems engineers? Do you need material handlers? What sort of roles does your project require? The availability of the team members. How much bandwidth do they actually have to devote to this new project that you're rolling out? So conflict management with other assignments. You may need to get your sponsor involved to support you in your request to have team members assigned and to give your project priority over other assignments. Holidays and vacations. So if you're planning out a schedule and let's say a particular task has a duration of 3 weeks, well, that could be impacted by a team member's vacation time or holidays. So be sure to allow for that. Shift differences. So let's say one of your team members is on a different shift than other team members. Is that going to complicate your schedule and communications between the team members? And then geographic location of the team members. Is this going to be an impact to the project and the performance of the project? Or are they going to be able to work that out? So if your team is virtual and geographically dispersed, how are you going to work that out? All of these things need to be considered. Communications. Oops, we got a little problem here. So the first step in communication planning is to ask yourself these important questions. Who needs information? What information does each stakeholder need? Why should the information be shared with the stakeholders? What is the best way to provide this information? When and how is the information needed? Who has the information that you need? And then when you have all of these answers, then you can begin to put together a communications plan. So basically, it's the who, what, when, how, all of that. So this is really bothering me. So here's an example from the PMBOK guide of just a different scenario of different types of communication. So you've got verbal and written, and then formal and informal. So a presentation it could be a verbal presentation, and that would be a formal verbal communication. You could have progress reports that are written and formal. Or maybe you could just give some brief notes to your team, and that would be more informal, but still written. And then you have like a verbal informal communication. It's just a conversation. Let's say you have a hallway conversation with one of your teammates. That's an informal verbal communication. So you can decide what level of formality is necessary, and then how you're going to present these communications, whether it's written or verbal. So what might be some types, and this is an open question to the room, what types of communications might you have in a project, and do you think that they would be need to be written or verbal? And I'm just going to pick on Whitney for a minute. Whitney, what type of communication could you envision giving to your team? And if you're speaking, you're on mute. Does anyone else want to offer a suggestion?
Yeah, I tend to I send emails as well as kind of like a spreadsheet or correspondence. Um, so those are the two main areas I use.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Lori, did you want to say something?
Yes, I just wanted to talk about the informal communications.
Okay.
That we should always be mindful of something that might be said that should be also documented in a follow-up email or notes of some kind.
That's an excellent point. So what might happen, let's say that I had that hallway conversation with one of the team members. So now that team member has information that the rest of the team doesn't have. So a good practice would be to follow up with an email informing the entire team of what was discussed, particularly if it's going to impact the project. So let's say that in this hallway conversation, an engineer told me that our testing had failed and needed to be repeated. So a good practice would be to send out an email to the entire team saying that earlier today, I had a conversation with the test engineer, Mike, and learned that the qualification test had failed and will need to be repeated. This impacts the schedule by 3 weeks and the budget by $50,000. So that could have serious consequences if I kept that information to myself. Yeah, perfect example, Lori. Thank you. All right, well, let's move on. Budget. Oh goodness, my headers are messed up for some reason. It's showing differently to you guys than it does to me, but all right. So creating the project budget. So when the project sponsor first meets with the project manager, you'll typically be told that this is the requirement, this is the objective of the project that you're being given, and this is your budget. You know, the organization has allocated X amount of money for you to achieve whatever outcomes you're being told to accomplish. And then that information is captured in the project charter at the beginning of the initiation phase. So it's up to the project manager then to create the project's working budget based on the cost estimates that you've gathered from the team. And then you use the contingency and the management reserves that we discussed last week to come up with something that looks like this. So that's how you create your budget buckets, if you will. So you may have to go back to your project sponsor at some point in the future to request additional funds. But at the beginning of the project, you'll know what your budget is. And then your budget performance is something that you will track throughout the project. And in tracking the performance of the budget, we'll use something called earned value analysis. So this is predictive, and it can help you understand, are you accomplishing the work at a rate that will allow you to complete the project within budget? Or are you not accomplishing the work within budget? So if you're behind schedule, but you're also spending less money, then that's probably okay. But if you're behind schedule and you're spending more money, then that's not good, because that probably means that by the time you get to the end of the project, you're going to overrun your budget. So this slide shows that BAC is the budget at completion. SV is schedule variance. So if I look here, and this is my earned value. So this is the value of the work that I've accomplished. I've earned the value of this work. And this red line shows the actual cost. So this is the value of the work that I've performed, but this is, the red line shows how much it has cost. That shows me that things do not look good, because I've only earned a little bit of value, but I've cost a lot. Does that make sense? I'm not working to my plan. All right, so if I look at this next slide, based on this example, what could you tell me about this project's performance to date? So look at their earned value, and here's our data, our date, status date. So earned value is down here. Our planned value is up here, and here's our actual cost. Does anyone have any?
If I'm reading correctly, you're going to be off time-wise, but still be on budget. So I don't know if later, behind schedule, but still be on budget.
Here's my estimate. Yeah, my estimate, my cost. So estimate at completion is up here. and my value is here. So by the time I complete the work, my estimate at completion is up here.
You got some explaining to do, Lucy.
Yes. And then, so here's my budget at completion, and here's my earned value. So you can see the difference. So I'm going to be behind schedule, and I'm going to be way over cost. Does everybody see that? So this is not a good project. Not on plan. Okay. So let's talk about the project schedule. So when we talked in week 1, the schedule is created after the work breakdown structure, or WBS, has been completed and all the dependencies have been identified. And then once those tasks are completed, durations, or the time it will take to complete the work, are assigned to the individual units of work, or the tasks. And then the resources can be assigned to those tasks. And this is how the schedule is created. So you first break down the work into their most discrete unit of work. You assign a duration to that unit of work, and then you assign the resources. So there are many tools for creating a project schedule, and here I've listed just a few. Now, my favorite is Microsoft Project. I love Microsoft Project because it's very robust, and you can utilize as much or as little of its deep set of tools as you feel comfortable with. You can keep it at a very high level, just creating a schedule, or you can go really deep and do lots of analysis and reports and stuff like that. And it's fairly ubiquitous. Lots of people use it. There's lots of training available and so forth. Now, a lot of companies use Excel, and they just create a schedule in a spreadsheet, and that may work for you. The thing that I don't like about creating a schedule in Excel is that it's almost impossible to link the dependencies. You have to be really creative to be able to do that. Airtable. Now, I love Airtable as well, and it has some automation that would allow you to add the dependencies, but it does take a bit of work. But you could try that as well. A lot of people love Smart Sheets. That's another product. Monday.com offers a lot of different tools, including project management, and you could check that out. Asana. Now, I'm not personally familiar with this tool, but I hear a lot of great things about it. Trello. I love Trello, and it's really great if you want to manage your project in a Kanban. Now, Jira is another project tool that I've heard people use for project management, but this was originally created for an IT trouble ticket tracking system. So I really wouldn't recommend it, but it is a solution that you could check out. So when you're creating your project schedule, some of the elements that I would recommend that you include at a minimum is a task number. So this will serve as an identifier for that element. A task description. You want to provide a brief description of the work being accomplished. A task duration. So as we said, once you've broken down the work into discrete units of work, you want to assign a duration. Now, this duration could be in days, it could be in hours, it could be in weeks, whatever amount of time you think that you and your team have decided that that work is going to take to be accomplished. And then a start date. So when will this work begin? Now, if you're using something like Microsoft Project, this will likely be automatically calculated for you based on the previous tasks and their dependencies. And then a finish date. Again, this would be automatically calculated based on the start date, the duration, and the previous dependencies. The next item in the schedule is the predecessors. So these are the tasks that must be completed before the task you're looking at can begin. So these are the dependencies, and they will impact the scheduling of this task. And then resources. So once again, you want to establish early on who's going to accomplish this work. And you can identify your resources by a specific name. Is it going to be Joe, Jim, Mary, Mike? You know, who's going to be doing that work? Or you can identify it by a department. Is it going to be IT, engineering, the warehouse, you know, whomever? And then you can continue to also think about other types of resources. Do you need specific test equipment? Do you need a lab? Do you need a third party to be involved? And you might want to add that as a resource as well. So once you've done that, here's an example of the task list view created for a specific project. And all of this information is just like I described. So this is from Microsoft Project, and it's just captured. It almost looks like a spreadsheet. Project does allow you to export directly to Excel, or PDF, so that you can share the information with those team members who don't have a Microsoft Project license. And other tools do that as well. Does anyone have any questions? Again, I don't want to go too fast. And I see we've got some comments in the chat. Okay. So Lori had asked a question earlier, I'm sorry I missed this, about whether contractors would be physical or human resources. And I'm sorry I missed that, but yes, contractors would also be, the contractor themselves could be tracked as a human resource, but the contract would be a physical resource. So that would be a procurement activity. But then when you get to the point like this of assigning resources, the contractor would be a human resource to track. Okay. So let's move on. So like I said, this is the task list, and you would also, I would recommend adding to your view, you've got the finish date, and you could also add the actual finish date. And so this will help you keep track of what has been accomplished and closed out versus what has not. All right. So then the next thing is the Gantt chart view. So from the task list, you can create it, a Gantt chart, which will show you visually the progress being made in your project. So this shows each of those tasks in a linear view. It also shows the dependencies. Like over here, you'll see this shows a dependency. This task has to be completed before this one can start, or this one. So this vertical line indicates a dependency. And the same thing here. This task has to be completed before this one can start, this before this one, and so forth. It's just a little waterfall. And this one had no dependencies, so it could start as soon as the project was launched, but it had to be finished before this could start. And then this task, as well as this task, both of these had to be completed before this task could start. Is that clear? Does everyone understand? Good. Okay. So this shows you a visual, like for this task, this much work has been accomplished. See that black bar in the middle? That shows you how much work has been accomplished. So these two, this shows some work has been accomplished. So even though this one isn't complete, I don't understand this exactly, but this isn't complete. This one has already started, and I think that's possibly an error, but we can go on. All right, so we're coming to an end. This is our last section. Key performance indicators, or KPIs. So you want to be aware of choosing key performance indicators for your project. So the KPIs are quantifiable measures used to evaluate the success of your project. And there are two types of KPIs, leading and lagging. Leading indicators predict change or trends in the project, and they serve as early warning signs of potential problems. Lagging indicators are measures of project deliverables or events. And so they provide information after the fact and reflect past performance. So leading is predictive and lagging is past. So the E, get it? Leading, predictive, the A, lagging, past. And in and of themselves, KPIs are of no use, and you only get the value when the team uses the information in some way. So KPIs should also be SMART, and in that I mean they need to be specific, they need to be meaningful, achievable, relevant, and timely. You probably all heard that SMART acronym before. So what should you be measuring? So KPIs, what you choose to measure with your KPIs is dependent on the project objectives and what you expect as your outcomes. But in general, some common KPIs include deliverable metrics. And so this includes things like errors, defects, size, weight, accuracy, reliability, efficiency, throughput. What is it that your project is going to deliver to the customer, whomever the customer is, whether it's internal or out or external? And then delivery. So work in progress, or WIP, lead time, cycle time, batch size, process efficiency, tack time, all of the things that revolve around the delivery of the product or project. Baseline performance. So start and finish dates, schedule variance, cost variance, budget at complete, all those metrics we were just discussing around earned value, those are definitely important here, along with your schedule performance. Resource performance. So your planned resource utilization versus your actual resource utilization, that would be an important KPI as well. And then the business value. Here, you'll probably hear some useful KPIs such as return on investment, cost benefit ratio, net present value. I'm sure you've heard some of those terms before. And then stakeholder satisfaction, a mood chart, net promoter score, morale, employee turnover. Those are things you can measure to understand stakeholder satisfaction. Would anyone like to suggest other KPIs that you might use to measure the success of your project?
No, but what in the world is a mood chart?
Well, a mood, it's really interesting. You should ask that. So it is a visual board that you might see in a factory, or you might create by querying or polling your team members. And it's just, you're going to love this, Karen. It's basically, what is your mood today? How do you feel about the project? Is it a happy face, a neutral face, a sad face?
Really? Like for real?
For real. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. That's what a mood chart is. What is your mood?
How? Okay.
So you're basically asking your stakeholders their level of satisfaction, and they respond with a happy face or a sad face.
Okay.
It's kind of a way to nip problems in the bud, right? So to speak.
Uh-huh.
Catch it before it goes too far.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Okay.
if you're getting more sad faces than happy faces, you know you need to do something to improve.
Okay. So that would be an example of a leading indicator, a lagging.
That's a lagging indicator. Yeah. But great question. Yep.
Okay. I get the application, like Carl said it, like Carl explained it. What I'm not getting is mood is so subjective.
Uh-huh.
Someone could have cut that person off on the way to work and they're pissed off to begin with. And then you ask them this question, how are you going to measure the performance when that is so subjective?
Ask me how many times I've used a mood chart.
Okay.
Yeah. Again,
Wow. Okay.
this is from the 7th edition of the PMBOK, which again is very new. We'll see how much, how it's adopted.
That could be a way though to indicate you need to follow up. So in other words, if they come in the morning and they're in a bad mood, maybe you ought to check in with them later in the day.
Okay.
That's kind of how to avoid that pitfall, I think.
Yeah, and another thing too is if you have that query, that poll at the same time every week.
Okay.
Let's say you have it set up, you've automated that poll, and you're tracking it week over week over week. You can eliminate outliers.
Okay, that makes sense.
You can do some statistical analysis that way.
Okay.
To eliminate outliers. All right.
Thank you.
All right, so coming up, this is our last chart. This is a dashboard, and it's just a very simple project dashboard. It gives you an example of how you can share your KPIs, whatever they may be, with the team, with your stakeholders, with your sponsor, and just it's actually called a RAG board, where RAG stands for red, amber, green. And so you're going to show amber means there's a concern, green means it's on track, and red means there's an issue. And so you just indicate what the activity is, what your recent accomplishments are, upcoming key deliverables, and you can list, 2 or 3 or 5 activities that you have coming up. So the key down here, the color key is on track, complete, concern, issue, on hold, canceled, or not started. And you can also, there's an area for risks, and which are threats and opportunities or mitigations, and then issues. And so this is just a very succinct dashboard. You might want to take a look at something like that. Again, there are lots and lots of different types of dashboards. This is just one. You can create your own. Lots of people like dashboards that use radio buttons, but I really like this one. And again, this is right out of the PMBOK. Well, at this time, I'd like to open up the floor for any questions. We've got a few minutes left. I'd be happy to go back to any slides that you want to see again. But the floor is open for any questions.
I have a question.
Yes,
Shocker.
Karen.
Shocker. I get the principles and concepts,
Great.
and I could see the application on a very complex project. How to scale this down for much smaller projects
Mm-hmm.
when your resources are like 3 people
Absolutely.
instead of 3 teams.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm kind of stuck.
Okay. Everything we've talked about is as applicable for a small project of 3 or 4 people as it is for a huge project with an integrated master schedule. So the basic information is you've been given a project, you've got a certain amount of work to accomplish, you've got a budget, and you need to track your performance against the work to be accomplished. So you need to create a project plan, which is basically the schedule portion. So let me go back to that slide. One more there. So you're gonna want to do the work breakdown and identify what your tasks are, and work with your team to identify, ask them, Joe, how long is it going to take you to do X, whatever X may be? And he'll say, oh, that's going to take me a couple of days. Great. I'm going to put a duration of 2 days. And Joe's going to be the one responsible. He's going to be the resource I name here. And is there anything you need to do that has to be done before you can start X? Oh yeah, I need blah, 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 blah. And this other task has to be finished first. Okay, that's going to be a predecessor. And you lay all of that out, and it it will eventually look like this.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And then as the work is accomplished, that's when you take credit for the amount of work, the units of work, basically. And that's how you get earned value for that work. And you say, okay, well, Joe billed his time, which was equivalent to $500. So we've taken that out of the budget. You know, that's no longer, we've expended $500 of our budget for Joe's work on task X from our budget. And that's how the tracking of the budget works as well. Anything else? Any other questions? Because I know we covered a lot today. I just want to make sure everyone is clear. I also want to let you know that these recordings are being uploaded to the MNI University website. And I'm also sharing, of course, the presentations. But if you have any questions following your review, you can always reach out to me as well. Anything else before we close? All right. Let me just share my contact information. Here you go. Again, it's been great having you all in the class today. Thank you so much for your participation. And remember, next week is our last week, and we're going to be talking about ethics. So ethics and project management, and I look forward to seeing you then. Have a great day, everyone. It's been a pleasure.